21st, 2009, hearing of the Radnor Township Zoning Hearing Board. Before we begin, we have a number of administrative items. The first is a letter dated April 28, 2009, to the Zoning Hearing Board regarding appeal number 2789, appeal of Paul Mastropieri, Rite Aid, 237-245 East Lancaster Avenue, Wayne, PA, from Donald T. Petrosa. Dear Zoning Hearing Board members, I am writing to respectfully request an extension of the zoning relief granted in the above referenced matter. The order provides that if the applicant fails to obtain a building permit within 6 months from November 21st, 2008, the decision will expire. Please be advised that we are pursuing a request for an amendment to the zoning ordinance to facilitate the project. If we are successful in obtaining an amendment to the zoning ordinance, we will still have to proceed through the land development process before the applicant can obtain a building permit. It will be impossible to obtain a building permit within the time provided by the order. The zoning amendment and land development procedures take a very long time. Accordingly, I am respectfully requesting an extension of the relief granted. I believe that it will probably be at least 1 year before the applicant will be in a position to obtain a building permit. Accordingly, I am respectfully requesting a 1-year extension from May 21st, 2009 to obtain the building permit. In the event that the board has a problem with granting a 1-year extension, I request an extension for at least 6 months, although I am confident that an additional extension will be necessary. Thank you very much. Any members of the board have any comments regarding the request for extension 1 year?
I think 6 months.
Okay.
Since that's what we usually do.
Yes, I agree.
Charlie, Peter?
6 months.
Okay, we'll grant an extension of 6 months.
Yeah, drive-through thing.
The next is a letter dated May 11, 2009, to the Radnor Township Zoning Hearing Board from William J. Levy, 232 Berwind Road, Wayne, PA. It's actually directed to the attention of Mr. Loper. Dear Mr. Loper, this is a request to appear before the Zoning Board at the May 21st meeting to request an extension of a variance for a 2-car garage. As discussed previously, I was told that Blair Johnson, previous owner of 232 Berwind Road, received a variance for a 2-car garage that was good for 1 year, ending June 30, 2009. It was also confirmed by the architect Brian Hillestad. I later learned the variance was only valid for 6 months. I apologize for the confusion and look forward to hearing from you. Is Mr. Levy present? Sir, if you'd come up. Can you be sworn? Sweet.
I do. William Joseph Levy.
Okay. What's up?
Yeah, I had bought the house in July of last year. Mr. Blair Johnson apparently came forward and requested a variance for a 2-car garage prior to that time. And I bought the house contingent upon getting that. I had then later engaged the architect that Blair Johnson had used, Brian Hilliard, and he, as well as Johnson, told me that the length of time that I had on the variance was 1 year to file. So what I later found out when I called Mr. Loper's office was that it was for 6 months.
Okay.
So obviously that's expired. So what I'm requesting for is another 6 months. It can be, contiguous to the expiration of the prior. And then what I'll do is file the plans and begin work on it by June.
Okay. What was the? So your 6 months ended in December 2008.
It would have ended in 2008. That's right.
Okay.
It would have ended in 2008. That's correct.
So you're already 6 months over. So you're going to need another 6 months from today.
That is correct.
Okay.
But I'd be happy just to get another, 6 months from the.
Well, it's already been 5 since it expired, right?
That is correct. So I could get it all, squared away in a month. So I could live with 6 months from, well, whatever, But I think what you're
I don't want to
offering is far
hamstring you
better.
because
Thank
with the way things are today. Does anybody have any comments regarding the
I have
request?
some questions. The plans that you're going to eventually build from, are they the same as what we saw?
They are.
It meets all the same dimensions
Absolutely.
and whatever?
Absolutely, same dimensions,
Okay.
everything.
What
It's the same
was-
architect was
Okay.
engaged to then expand on them.
What was the relief that we had given? Does anybody happen to remember? Do you recall?
Was it? I think it was a side yard.
side yard?
Yeah, it was a side yard.
Was
that's
it
correct.
a type of situation where you weren't expanding the amount of
I
nonconformity?
think this was the one, is it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a sort of a ranch-style house?
That is correct.
And there was, originally there was a garage on the side, and then it became converted into a family room, and then
That's right.
they wanted to put a garage
Oh,
on.
yeah.
That's
Remember
right.
that
So-
one? Yeah,
That-
they
that's
came back
exactly
a couple
right.
times.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
Yeah,
right.
good memory.
All right, then I would go along with 6 months.
6 months from when?
It expired,
He's already 5 months late. It expired in December '08.
Another alternative you could pursue is to set, rather than to say extend it to a date certain, like June 30, July 31, August 1st, rather than, calculating
The
months.
time.
We don't seem to know when exactly this
Right.
third expired.
Right.
Say it's extended from expiration to a date certain, if that's what the board would like
Right.
to do.
We can.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
I like the date idea. We set a
Okay.
date.
What do you think? This is September 1?
Yeah, September 1.
Great.
Does that work?
That's perfect, yeah.
Comments? You good? You guys are all right with
I
that?
want to do what?
Thank you.
June, July, August, September 1, okay, 3 months.
Okay.
September 1.
September 1, great, thank you.
Okay. The next administrative item relates to an appeal. So, John, you had some comments regarding some practices that the board.
Yeah, we, at the last hearing, we had a request in the Appeal 2746 for an extension of time from the 6-month expiration. During that case has been appealed. James Schneller has appealed it, and my understanding is that is up by the Commonwealth Court. However, it became apparent during the hearing that the 6-month notation, which only applies to special exceptions and variances under our code, should not have been applied to the decision in 2746 because it was an interpretation of the code. No relief was granted. And so and under the law, this board is clearly authorized to correct clerical errors, which this amounts to. That notation was put on by the township. It happened. It's no big deal, but it shouldn't have been put on. So we told the applicant, Norsini Builders, that they didn't need an extension of the 6 months because for an interpretation there is no 6-month limitation in the first place. Mr. Schneller objected at the hearing, and there are a lot of issues, I gather, in the litigation, including the standing of Mr. Schneller to participate because he lives so far away. But that's a matter for the applicant's, Norsini Builders' attorneys to deal with in the courts. What we received is an email dated 14 May objecting to our saying that correcting the clerical error. It's an email purports to be from Mr. Schneller to Bob Loper. It's dated May 13th. Has a long litany of stuff, but the bottom line is that this is not a signed email.
And there are no indicia that this is in fact from Mr. Schneller. We have no idea.
And as a matter of practice, and I think it's one that the courts would require, we have not accepted unsigned emails as evidence of anything, either participating as a party or as testimony, and this board has consistently refused to accept or act on unsigned emails, and my advice to the board is that this should not be accepted. Unsigned emails, in my view, if we were to accept them into records, accept them as evidence of party standing, would be reversed very quickly by any court, and they would frankly look kind of amiss at this board for having accepted them in the first place.
Okay.
So my advice to the board, if it agrees, is that we simply disregard the email. By the way, we also don't have an ability to hear an appeal of our own decision. But
Right.
before we even get to that, I don't think we can act on an unsigned email.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Turning to the appeals before us this evening, the first one is appeal number 2814, Radnor Properties Corporation, Inc. William Stafridis, president, and I apologize if I mispronounced.
Excuse me, Jim,
Yes,
did we have a third administrative
I
item?
did, but it relates to an application.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Property located at 337 West Lancaster Avenue, Wayne, PA, zoned CO Commercial Office District and in Ward 1. Applicant seeks to lease the lower level of the building to be used as a cosmetology salon. Applicant seeks a variance from Section 28042, a special exception under 28101A of the code, or contends that the use is permitted as of right. Mr. Cornelia.
Thank you. I just have some additional exhibits that I'll hand up to the board that I've marked A10 through A14. And Norma, you want to throw them in? Yes.
With your blood pressure right hand and swear your life, you do solemnly swear or affirm this testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if you'll state your name for me one more time, please,
William Stavridis,
and spell that, please.
Stavridis.
Joseph Ralph Capizoli, C-A-P-O-Z-Z-O-L-I, Jr.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. C-I-P.
P-O-Z-Z-O-L-I, Jr.
Thank you. This is a property located at 337 West Lancaster Avenue for basis of where it is basically right across the street from Nella's Diner. As you're probably aware, across the street you have a couple restaurants, your Chili's restaurants, you have a great frame retail store, you have Nella's Diner, you have a locksmith. And then on his side of the street, where it's zone CO, you have a bank, and then you have the Verizon retail store, you have the UPS retail store, you have Sherwin-Williams paint store, you have a real estate agency, as well as a orthodontist and an optometrist, I believe. The current building that this is part of currently has a dentist in it, an attorney, and another office-type use. We are asking for relief for approximately a little over 800 square feet, which is really the basement space in this building. It was previously used by Allstate Insurance Company, where they had 7 or 8 people working in there. You'll hear testimony here this evening that basically we only have the 2 applicants who are tenants who will be using the space. Once in a while, they would have another employee, occasionally on Saturdays. Dr. Stavridis bought the premises in 1960. He bought it with Dr. Rowland, who some of you may recall, and Dr. Rowland has since passed away, and his wife the estate is now partners with Dr. Stavridis in the property. Actually, Dr. Stavridis and Dr. Rowland both practiced out of the property since 1958. Then they purchased it in 1960 from the Flales. When they purchased it, it was an office building in commercial type use. In the 60s, actually, this type of use undoubtedly would have been permitted, that is a personal service shop, but the code changed around 1968 or 1970 so that this use is not permitted, or arguably not permitted. Bill, do you want to step up? You've been sworn in, Bill, and why don't we use... Yeah, there you go.
Oh, my own.
You're right.
Thank you.
And where do you live currently?
We live in Stratford on Mansell Road off of Old Eagle, Stratford, PA.
Okay, and you are the Radnor. What is Radnor Properties? You and Dr. Rowland's widow, basically, are the owners of the property?
What do we do?
Or Radnor Properties consists of you and
Yes,
Dr. Rowland's estate?
just the 2 of us. It was Dr. Rowland and I, and we've operated it since 1960.
And actually, you operated your dental practice out of there from when to when?
I have 52 years of practice. I started in 1953, moved in 58 to this location, and retired in 2005.
And when was the building built?
1924.
And you purchased it in 1960?
Yes.
And prior to the purchase, as you mentioned, you and Dr. Rowland were actually tenants and operating your practices out of there. Is that correct?
Right.
When you first acquire the property, first I'll ask you to identify a couple of exhibits. One is the deed, which is A2, indicating that you purchased it in 1960, correct?
Yes, that's the deed. Yeah.
And when you first purchased, the uses were different, correct? In other words, there were several uses that were permitted. Almost every commercial use was permitted in the premises. when you
Yes, I
purchased.
think the redefining of commercial came later, I think with Robert Porter et al., and it became more restrictive. I think we defined commercial and broke it down into different, but we could have had a gas station there or
No,
anything.
I've marked as A3, just the zoning code from 1960, when this premises was actually zoned C1, it was before we had a CO zoning code in Radnor. And it permitted a wide variety of commercial uses, including a personal service shop, office use, a retail store, restaurants. It permitted pretty much everything. I believe that changed around 1968 or 1970, somewhere in that area. Were you even aware that it ever changed?
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Okay.
I did not know.
right.
They didn't ask me.
And at that time also, you'll notice in the code it's non-conforming as to parking because it was only required to have one space for each 500 square feet of floor area. So actually at that time it only was required to have 6 or 7 parking spaces, and that's marked as A3. Now I'm going to show you what's been marked as A4, which is actually the survey of the property.
Yes.
And the property has existed the same since you purchased it?
Yes.
You haven't put on any additions or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay. And you have actually the main building, and you have another one-story building here too, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and you have, according to the plan here, a gross area for both buildings, floor area that is, of 4,755 square feet? All right, and the parking spaces, you have 11 spaces on site, and actually, you told me you could actually fit some more spaces on
Oh,
there too,
yes.
is that right? And where would that be located?
Along the property line here, you could have 3 more cars if it were needed. If this was varied here, we could add another one here.
But then, well, you have to pull up. How about here? Did you say there was another one also?
Oh, yes, yeah, there are 2 there.
Right, but there's only showing one, actually.
Yeah, there are 2.
Okay, also, there's some off-street parking. Tell us about the off-street parking. Is there 4 off-street parking spaces?
There are 4 spaces on the street that have recently, the township decided to issue permits for, and my tenants, the dentist and the attorney and the attorney's part-time secretary, and one other office use, they got those permits and they have them, and they park there. No one else can park on the street except up by the residents.
So actually, counting those spaces, we would have 19 spaces for
Yes,
parking?
at least.
Let me ask you this. Has this premises been full in the past, 100% full?
I've never seen it
No,
that
I meant,
way.
no. I meant the building. Has the building been 100% occupied?
Oh,
The building.
yes. For many years, we were solidly occupied everywhere.
Have you ever had a parking issue?
No.
Currently, how much is occupied?
We're only about 40% occupied currently and hurting.
The area that we're talking about here, which is sort of the lower level, basement level, who occupied that space before, the proposed tenant?
From the beginning?
No. Just most recently, who occupied the space?
Oh, Allstate Insurance Company, who is still in Radnor and moved out, still in Wayne, and moved out because they needed more filing room space. They needed a bigger office, and they left about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago.
Okay, and how many people did they have in there?
They came and went but I counted 7 or 8 screens and people with computer screens. They had a lot of people in there,
Now, you said they left about 4 years ago?
I think.
And also, you mentioned that I believe the people in the adjacent building also left on the property?
Yes, we had an accountant in there until last September. He was there 11 years, and with a secretary. But his type of work seemed never to have anybody come to the office. He worked all over the country, and there was no pressure there for parking.
Mr. Capozzoli's space, was there any redefining of the space that he was taking? I mean, was he moving walls, partitions, anything of that nature?
He was getting his office ready, new floor, paint.
But he was using the same space as it existed?
Oh, yeah, you can't, there are no walls. The place would fall down if you moved big walls. No, nothing like that.
Now, what attempts have you made to lease the premises in the last several years?
At one point...
now we're talking since Allstate left, okay, so... in the last...
Allstate, well, Binswanger, we got Binswanger who made an attempt to lease and or sell the property. They actually, Binswanger found the dentist, and he came in to the property. He was unable to find an occupant for the other empty spaces in the building.
How long did you have at least with Binswanger?
I seem to remember 13 months.
All right, and after that, what other attempts did you make to lease the premises?
I advertised in the Suburban and in the Mainline Times. I put in ads. We showed the space to a number of folks. No one was interested to the point of leasing.
Okay. And most recently, you hired another real estate agent?
We hired Prudential, Fox Roach, 2 offices, their Devon office and their Exton office, 2 agents. They've been active, I think, since November of last year up to the present. We're still under contract with them.
Okay, and actually, you entered into a lease with Mr. Capozzoli, is that correct?
Yeah, that one agent brought Mr. Capozzoli in. Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Capozzoli started doing some minor things there, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall, like, I believe it was putting in new sinks?
Actually,
I'll have him testify to that, okay.
he was uncovering old sinks. Dr. Rowland had 5 examining rooms in there, and the Allstate folks built boxes around the sinks. They're opening them up and putting in plumbing fixtures. He replaced the fixtures in the powder room, that sort of thing.
Okay. But actually what happened was someone came in from the township and said, wait a minute, this use may not be permitted? Is that what brings us here this evening?
Mr. Peely came in and yelled at me and said, you can't do that. You can't do that. Stop right away.
And you did stop. You stopped since then.
I thought he was going to nail the door shut.
Okay.
Nick, can we hear about the character of the neighborhood?
Yeah, we are. I'm going to show you what I've marked as A5, which shows that CO strip there, and you'll notice that there's a PB, planned business. There's another CO, which is Stratford Office Buildings. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which is about, I think, 4 office buildings, right? And then you'll notice across the street is Zone C2, all the way up here, with a small area of C3, right? Correct?
That's right.
All right, now, showing on your block, first, across the street. What's across the street from you?
The locksmith, Dayton Lock Company, and then, of course, Manella's. Next to them is the Chili's restaurant, and below them, I get foggy here, there was a shop selling framing services and antiques.
Okay,
And on
and,
the very corner is Bell Telephone.
all right, let's go from the corner of Banbury up to
Okay.
Farm, where you are.
All right, we're starting with a new bank on the corner, Susquehanna. Next to them is a building that has several levels, offices upstairs, and the Verizon retail store.
And that's what's been marked
Is
as
ground floor.
That's
yeah.
been marked as A10, the Verizon retail store.
Right.
And then next to them, also part of
Is
A10.
the UPS store, which sells copying services and packaging and so on.
And then next
services.
to them,
Sherwin-Williams.
retail paint store.
Retail paint store, yes.
All right. And then as we go further up the street,
Well, next to them is a real estate office. Remax is in there.
right, and
Is
then
in there.
what we've shown is A7 at 333 and 335 West Lancaster.
My colleagues, orthodontists with their offices in there, and then the building between the orthodontist and our building is an optician who sells eyeglasses, and there's a dentist in there as well.
Okay, and then A6, that's your
That's our
premises,
property,
correct?
Yeah,
And-
on the corner, yeah.
And if you look at that, this little porch right here on the side, that's where the entrance is for
That's
the
the
basement
entrance
space.
for Mr. Capasoli's place,
Okay, and there's that building that we talked about, that
which is
accessory building.
unoccupied.
Right. Now, have you gone out and taken pictures at various times of the week and day to indicate how busy your parking lot is?
I was given the assignment, yes.
Okay, and
And I, almost every day, for whatever days, I've dated the pictures I took, the days I took pictures, and I put the time down. And of course, I have no idea from home who's there, but I drove in from home and took whatever existed.
so, for
From
example,
Monday all the way.
all right, so we're showing A11 and actually 2 p.m. on Monday, May the 4th. There's no cars in there.
No cars.
How frequently is the dentist that uses space? How long is he there?
I think the dentist is spending one day a week, Friday, that I know of. He may have, emergencies. He might have some other time. I don't know. But I never see him there. I think Fridays pretty much. He has other interests and other work that he does,
Okay, and
other than dentistry.
still going with A11, the one 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday, May the 6th. It looks like there's
I
two.
believe that upper picture shows his automobile, and this may be a patient's automobile in the lower lot.
Okay, and then the next one you have Thursday, May the 7th, 4 o'clock. There's one
That's
vehicle.
the attorney's, Charles Frazier's car is there, yes.
And then Friday, May 8th, there doesn't appear to be any cars in there, 9:30 a.m.
None?
Monday, 10:25 a.m. on May the 11th. No vehicles?
No vehicle.
And you're not coming out here and taking pictures because there's no vehicles, right? You're just,
I don't know that when I leave home. I leave home whenever my wife gives me permission, and I go take the pictures.
Tuesday, May the 12th, one vehicle, looks like Charles's.
That's Mr. Frazier's, Squire Frazier.
Wednesday, May 13th,
Nobody.
nobody. Thursday, May
That's
14th.
Mr. Frazier again. There's a car parked in front, isn't it?
No, that one.
Oh, no,
Okay.
I'm wrong. That's the other side of the street.
Friday, 3:25, May 15th.
Right.
No vehicles.
No vehicle.
And Monday, May 18th, 10:45, one vehicle.
Yeah, one car. I don't identify it. I don't know who it is.
And have you gotten letters from your immediate neighbors?
Yes, my immediate next door neighbor, Mr. Neil Yerger, wrote me a nice letter.
And I've marked them as Mr. Yerger and
Yerger.
A13 and Ms. Heth.
The widow
A14?
Heth, yeah. Mrs. Heth, the next house, These are our closest neighbors on Farm Road. And I've known Mrs. Heth for more than 40 years.
That's all I have for Dr. Stavridis. I would actually call Mr. Capozzoli next just to talk about what he's doing as far as his business. And Joe, you've been sworn in.
Yes, I have.
And where do you live, Joe?
1010 Mountain View in Wayne,
Okay, and what's the name of your company?
Cappy and Company.
And what type of business does Cappy and Company do? First, who is Cappy and Company?
Well, Cappy is a nickname that I've had for many years, the last name being Capozzoli, so we just took that, and it was a family name, and our family had been in business for years in Philadelphia. And when my uncle passed away, it just so happened we just took the name of Cappy.
Okay, now who owns Cappy and Company?
My wife and I.
Okay. I mean, well, we'll get to that. Tell us the type of business that you and your wife are in.
It's a cosmetology salon. And basically under cosmetology, I personally do hair services, just hair cutting, color, perming, those services. And my wife performs aesthetic services, which is skin care, skin rejuvenation, facials, those types of
If you also do therapeutic massage?
Therapeutic massage as well. Infant massage, which we teach outside of the salon.
Right. And is your practice or your customers, or your clients, do they come by appointment only, or can they just show up?
No, our clients, we work by appointment. It's basically, Nick, I'll just talk and shut me up where I want me to.
Well, just tell us about how it works.
Our operation, basically, we're downsizing. It's my wife and I, and as Nick said earlier, we have another massage therapist that comes and goes on a Saturday. He may have one appointment, he may have two, he may have none. Most of the time, it's none. And with my wife and I doing services, our customers, most of them have been with us for many years. This June will be 25 years. I'll be celebrating our anniversary. And our customers come in, it's by appointment. They're what we call standing appointments. They're either 4 weeks, I have some weekly, some 4 weeks, some 6 weeks, some 8 weeks, some 6 months. But they all book ahead because we don't have a receptionist. And they just book appointments and they're confirmed, just like you would in the dentist office if you're booking out.
How long is a typical, how long do you and your wife typically see a customer?
Anywhere from, if I keep my mouth shut, I can keep it to an hour, but normally they're myself at 60 to 90 minutes because I just don't do haircuts. I'm too old for that. I'm not going to stand on my feet and see 25 people a day every half hour. So my customers are mostly cut and color customers, and they're there 60 to 90 minutes. And the same thing for my wife. Hers are mostly 90 to 120 minutes.
And how many customers would you have in there at any one time, maximum?
Any one time, we normally typically see 8 clients a day. I'd be servicing one, and as they're finishing up, the other's walking in the door. So, and if Teresa's doing one customer, it's the same thing. It just depends on the time. If it's a 9 o'clock appointment and they're finished at 10:30, 10:20, someone else is walking in the door. Okay. The other one's leaving.
Right. You mentioned you've been in business for 25 years. Most recently, where have you been in business?
Of the 24 years, we were in Radnor in Easttown Township. 14 of the most recent in Berwyn.
And why are you leaving?
Well, our lease was up March 31st, and Teresa and I decided, as I said earlier, to downsize. At the time when we opened there 13 years ago, we had 6 employees. Through the years, they've come and gone, and after they started leaving, we stopped replacing. And we got to the point now where it's just us.
Did you terminate that lease?
I terminated that lease. I had to give them 90 days notice, so it was January 1st I terminated the lease.
And actually, you're still there. They've been nice enough to...
They've been very nice, and I got very lucky that the building had not been released. So I called and begged, and You know, and I said, hopefully it's not leased, and they said you can stay there as long as you want on a month-to-month basis.
Now, but they do have someone coming in your space now?
They have rented it, that's what I was told, as of July 1st.
When did you enter into the lease with Dr. Stavridis?
December 26th.
And you heard testimony as to what you were doing and what happened?
Mm-hmm.
And then the township came in and said, no, stop.
Township said stop, and, you know, which I was surprised about, and I just figured, well, I guess the scope of work, they requiring permits, let's just go get the permit. Well, you know, I don't know who the gentleman was, but evidently he was doing his job, and he said it's not that easy. There's an issue with zoning, which totally knocked me for a loop, because I said, wait a minute, I have a lease. I didn't prepare it. I didn't write in beauty salon and for usage. Somebody should have looked at this. And I do apologize. I mean, I feel this is terrible. I mean, that, you know, an agency, and it was Fox Roach Prudential.
All right, that's not, okay.
I know, I'm sorry, but
that's not, okay.
it doesn't sit nice with me.
Yeah, okay. What's your days of operation?
We are there Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays from 9 a.m., and the last client we see is at 5:30, which gets us out of there about 8 p.m.
And how about
Saturdays?
And Saturdays.
8 a.m., and the last client is taken at 12:30, which we get out about 2 o'clock.
Okay, and how do you get there? How do you and your wife arrive to the premises?
Drive.
Right, I mean,
car.
together?
Together, yeah.
So you're with your wife almost all day,
Yes.
and that works out?
So far, we've been on 2 floors. We're going to see how we do on 1 floor now.
Okay. We've drawn a sketch plan here, A12, and it's approximately 107 square feet is what we calculate. Could you just run through and tell the board what basically we're looking at? And actually, did you change anything? This was the existing.
Yeah, all the
walls
were existing. We had just put a door up. Well, I'll just come over here. The stylist area that you see here, I did set up for 2 chairs in the event of an overrun. And then the reception area, when you walk in the door, which is a common area shared by the clients of myself and my wife, it's more of a living room type setting. To the right there, the skincare office is 1 treatment room. And then the 8x8 office, that wall, I moved the door over because the door was in the center and it just fit better over on the right.
And that office is for you and your wife?
For my wife and I, yes.
Yeah.
It's just for our paperwork. And then the other room is another, which is as a massage room, as a treatment room number 2. It's a multi-purpose room. The one that's marked supplies, where you see shampoo sinks, there's 2 shampoo sinks which are going on that wall there. And then behind it is what we call a dispensary, which is just cabinets that keep our supplies in there, our perms or color, and so on. The storage utility, and then the powder room, the storage utility room, Dr. Stavridis was kind enough to allow us to just put in a washer and dryer to use, but it's basically that room of utilities contains the air conditioning units, the hot water heater, the electrical for the entire building.
Right, so it's not, you're just using the washer and dryer.
So it's not just myself.
Right.
Yeah, we're just using whatever little space for the washer and dryer. It fit perfect, that's why. It's perfect space.
That's all I have.
Nick, maybe I missed it. What's the hardship here?
Well, one, the use is, Dr. Stavridis has tried to rent the premises for several years now. Has been unable to rent it. Part of it may be the economy. Part of it may be where it's located. It's located in the basement type level. Finally, he comes across someone that he can rent it to. And the use itself is very consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. You have a number of nonconformities in this zoning district, in this CO zoning district. You have the paint store, you have the Verizon store, you have the UPS store, and you have similar things right next to him. Basically, what a dentist does and what an optician does is the same thing that he's doing, his personal service. So it's very similar and very common to the neighborhood. And it's something certainly that it's not going to be any detriment at all to the neighborhood. And again, Dr. Savides has attempted to rent it and been unable to rent the space. And we're talking about a little over 800 square feet.
Any other members of the board have any questions or comments? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding this application? Okay, you want to take this one, Kathy?
Just make request exhibits to be part of the record.
Okay, you want me to do it? It is my suggestion that we grant variance.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I made a note and I forgot to ask it. Could you kind of go over the parking again for us, please? Just relative to what they believe they're going to have at any given time as compared to what's there already and the people that are using?
Correct.
I'm sorry, and you're not looking for a variance from any
No.
parking issue at all?
No, because it's actually non-conforming as to parking. The code indicates that it's already an existing non-conformity as to parking, because when they purchased it back in 1960, it was a fully occupied office building, and at that point, at that time, as the code shows, they were only required to have 6 parking spaces. Obviously, the code's changed since that period
I'm
of
not
time.
so sure we can finesse the parking quite that way. I think that because it's an office, as it's looking at the office buildings and banks.
How many are required?
19, actually,
And you
which
have,
I think is what we can get if you count. Remember, there's 4 on-street parking that's permit only. That's actually the permits are by the occupants of the building, and we can get 4 more in there by parallel parking along the property line and fitting 1 more in this area as well.
I guess looking at the categories here, this isn't a retail store, so we're not in that, so probably would be within the same category for parking purposes.
well, we could also bank it if required, indicate where they may go if needed.
Yeah, they would go along this eastern property line. They would be parallel along the 3 along the eastern property line, and then 1 in this area by the porch.
Would you be able to mark the plan up accordingly, or would you just rather stick with the,
No, description. It's up to you.
In this,
go with your theory on that situation?
I think that I'm not sure that unless you feel a particular parking, board feels a particular parking issue or need here, I'm not sure that we need to get into banking
All right.
parking.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of parking for the way it would be used, but I thought if you wanted to meet it, we could indicate where they would go, and they could be banked, basically, if required later. But if you feel,
I think that
Doing it the other way,
I think
I'm
we're
fine with
okay
that.
on parking. It's the use is not. It needs the variance, but I think that whether it's the insurance office or this personal service office, I think they're both within the same category of parking. So I think we're okay on parking.
all right.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the audience? I would suggest that we grant a variance from Section 280-42 to permit the use, which proposed use is entirely consistent with the existing uses on that same side of Lancaster Avenue, and to my understanding, has been consistent for at least the past 10 years. In any event, I think there's been an adequate showing of compliance with the factors required under the municipality's planning code for the grant of a variance, and I would suggest that we grant it.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree also. I think I would add the fact that that since it is basement space and the ability to rent basement space and for this type of operation specifically in a lower level space is plenty adequate. I think the hardship because of the type of space it is should go as well.
And I just want to caution that these are on the facts of this application only. It's granted. Thank you. The next matter is appeal number 2815, Paul Bloomfield, RA, for owner Pam Hay, Director, Mainline Montessori School, property located at 459 Sproul Road, Villanova, PA, zoned R1 and in Ward 4. Applicant seeks relief from strict enforcement of riparian buffer as determined by the Township engineer for purposes of extending driveway to new locations for parking. Applicant seeks a special exception from section 28089.7 boundary determination. Sir?
Paul Bloomfield for Mainland Montessori. I'm a registered architect in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yep. We swear the witness in.
This one. I do.
And state your name, please.
Paul Bloomfield,
Nobody from the Montessori school.
Bloomfield.
Anthony Assetto. Assetto.
Mr. Bloomfield, is anyone from the Montessori school here tonight?
Director, Ms. Pam Hague.
Ma'am, if you can come up and be sworn.
Has she purchased the property? Is she now the legal owner?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Just to refresh everybody's memory, we actually appealed for a change of use last June, I believe it was, and I have a copy of the plan that we put forth at that time, just to compare with what's happening now. That's shown here, and okay.
And talking to Mike. Do we have a handheld mic, or is that?
I haven't seen it in the
I'm
last
just trying
couple
to
of
get
months.
close to the plan here. Is this working? Okay. In that previous plan that was put forth, the existing driveway and the existing bridge at the crossing was to be removed and relocated to the opposite side of the property. This was to become a two-lane crossing and provide a straight access to a new parking area for the school. At the time that we made the application, it was determined in conversation with the township engineer that this represented a minimal crossing and was then granted by right and not part of the application that we followed through with. So when we made the appeal, we were asking for relief for the riparian buffer, but when we actually presented it, we limited our appeal to simply the change of use because of that determination, because Dan Malloy, looking at this, was in agreement that this represented a minimum crossing that was allowed by right. The major change that's happened since that time is represented on the record plan that we submitted this time, and let me just switch to that. I also have one other exhibit that I'd like to give everybody, which
Just a second. We have in the file an agreement of sale, but we don't have a deed. Did you ever
Yeah, I
close?
was going to ask for that. Where's
yeah,
the deed?
it's absolutely been closed. I didn't have a copy of the deed. The application asked for either one, and this was easier to access.
Normally,
but
we
yes.
take a deed if you've gotten to that point. And I mean, I would, the agreement of sale shows that they had equitable standing, and Ms. Hague is the buyer under that. So I think, but normally, I mean, I think we could get by, but normally we ought to have a deed.
Agreed. But
I
I think we have enough indicia of ownership, don't we?
No, I said we can get by.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the record plan that was submitted with this application, and this shows what we'd like to do at this point, which is essentially to retain the existing crossing at its current location, but still put the parking where it was originally proposed. This is because of a number of factors that were learned kind of in developing the project after our last meeting. So among those include tremendous barriers to locating a new stream crossing. When we spoke to various agencies about this, we engaged Yerkes and Associates to develop permitting for the new bridge and for the highway change of use. And it was determined at that point that a new crossing would have to comply with current codes that would essentially, because of the nature of this site being partially in the floodplain, require a span that was something in the order of 100 feet in length and 8 or so feet above the stream. a prohibitive kind of a structure that was not in keeping with the kind of a bridge that's there now and not in keeping with the intent of the use of the property. We're talking about something that would go beyond even the building at that point to create the kind of span that would be technically required because of the floodplain. We, in conversation with the DEP, learned that we would be much more able to retain the current location for that crossing, and we did in fact obtain permission to replace this bridge in kind in its current location with essentially the same type of bridge, slightly wider so that it would allow for traffic, slightly longer so that the water would flow. The cross-section underneath the bridge is substantially improved so that the water will flow underneath the bridge rather than being dammed by the bridge and circulating around it, which happens on occasion now.
So what we're doing, the bridge exists, you're just basically going to replace it with the same kind of bridge.
Exactly.
And the old application envisioned eliminating that bridge and instead having a new driveway, a new
Correct.
bridge to the south, which would have also intruded into the riparian
Correct.
area. How much of the driveway and gray area exists now on the east bank of the stream? How much of that exists now?
What exists now is what originally did exist, is a narrower driveway and a narrower bridge now, and then temporary parking in this area on that side of the property, and a little bit of driveway all the way to the back of the building, which is being used for employee parking now. So the new parking lot is not there now, but that location has been proposed from the beginning and is dependent partly on the resolution tonight. So what we're asking for is to be able to extend the driveway across to that parking location.
Why don't we do that now? Mr. Bloomfield, why don't we start from the top and just label your exhibits so we're all working from the same numbers?
Yeah, I know what they're going to do.
What I would suggest is that we label your application as A1.
Okay? So that's the drawing that's labeled SP, and we'll call that
No.
A1?
No.
This-
Oh, I'm sorry, the application.
That's the application, okay. That would be A-1. The agreement of sale would be A-2.
And then what they're going to do is get rid of this and come this way.
Okay. The plan that's labeled SP would be A3.
Yeah, they're going to come, before they're going to come straight in and park. I wanted to see.
And then you have a number of photographs. Why don't we, and they are labeled by page numbers. Let's make page 1 as A4. All those photos will be A4.
New plan is 22. Yeah, new plan.
Make page 2 A5. And then parking calculations, that would be A6.
A6.
Is there anything further that we've missed?
Yeah, I have one more that I'd like to.
If we could hand those up,
So
that would be desirable.
A7. This is essentially the planting plan for the restoration of the riparian zone. And I'd like Mr. Aceto to explain the details of the planting plan and the various zones that are represented there and how that's to be executed. But for the moment, just clarifying what we're seeking here is to be able to extend this hatched area is the area that would be encroaching within the 35-foot limit of that riparian buffer. It's unclear to me, and Mr. Malloy was unable to satisfy me as to whether or not a structure describes something like we're talking about here. The riparian buffer in the code says that you're not able to locate a structure within 35 feet. So my first question is this a structure? Typically, this has been interpreted as something with a roof in other cases, and obviously that's not what's planned here. something like a kid's play area or a sandbox or something like that. I don't know whether that would count.
So our definition of structure in the code is rather broad. It's any
Yeah.
man-made object having an ascertainable stationary location on or in land or water. Now, you're saying that the only thing that is going to be in the riparian area is paved surfaces.
Is the paving for the, half of the driveway that's connecting here. So it's certainly man-made, but anyway. When we spoke to him further and developed this plan, Dan Malloy, that is, he had at some point felt that this was no longer a minimum request, since the other plan represented that. And so because of that change, he's requested that we present this again to the board.
Yeah, I guess as I look between the old plan and the new, it seems to me you have more stuff in the riparian area in terms of paved surfaces, be they driveway or parking areas, under the new plan than the old.
We do.
And you have one bridge either way. You wouldn't have had two, so the bridges stay constant.
Yeah, the bridge is actually narrower in the current proposal, as is the traffic lane, so the total square footage is not just the reflected by the new area across the boundary, but there's a slight reduction in the size of that crossing and then the additional paving.
An existing bridge does not have to be the 100-foot span with 8-foot height.
No, we're able to get essentially an emergency relief where we can replace that bridge with a bridge in kind. So the same type of bridge, but as I say, it would be lengthened, which would allow much more water to flow underneath the bridge, and raised only slightly. There's been some subsidence of the current bridge because of the conditions.
Why can't you keep the existing driveway and put the bridge behind it and put the playground where the parking lot is now?
A couple of reasons, and that our worst case scenario, that's what we would probably end up having to do.
I think that's what you're going to do.
Well, we've got the existing structure that has its own entry points and so forth, is laid out as classroom spaces now. The only way that we can do that is essentially to pave around the structure, and now those classrooms and where the spaces where those children are relating directly to vehicular zones rather than a protected zone for the children.
If you remember, I don't know if you were here when this first came up. I mean, the water was an issue. The water was an issue with neighbors, and I think that by paving in that riparian right away is going to make the problem even greater.
Well, we're not actually adding to any of the impervious coverage here. We're paving the same amount.
I understand that, but you're paving in the riparian right away. There's a difference between that and what you were doing before.
I understand that. The fact is, this entire site is in a floodplain, essentially, so
we understand
the
that,
definition of the riparian boundaries,
because of where the site is and because of the type of operation that was going in there. That's why we granted the variance, because of the minimal amount. That's why I agreed to the variance, because of the minimal amount of intrusion into the right-of-way, the riparian right-of-way. I'm having a hard time now re-examining and going back in and giving you. I don't know if I would have done it had you presented it this way back 6 months ago, or whenever you did it.
I'd like the opportunity to present the master plan for the restoration of the riparian zone. It's the school's interest and the school's intent to help to correct the erosion problems that are there, that are being caused by the existing bridge and by uncontrolled runoff from the Sproul Road side. And we have a plan that we think would absolutely improve water quality given this layout, because of what we're going to be able to do along the stream bank.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'm with you with all that. You can still improve the bridge so it doesn't have the impact on the creek and the riparian right away, whether it goes straight. Because what we're talking about, the real change comes after you cross the creek and almost after you clear the riparian right away. Because if you go straight and come around the building, that kind of solves the problem. I think Mr. Malloy would again look at it as a minimal intrusion into the riparian right away and make things a lot easier.
In terms of the riparian, I think it would be easier. In terms of the function of the school, it presents a number of problems. I spoke earlier about just the access points and so on, but also that portion of the site, this back corner, is elevated at a higher level than the remainder of the site. These kids are outside using this play area more than once a day and coming in and out. If they're required now to use the lower portion of the site, which is going to be getting the runoff then from pavement, that lower area is going to be, I'm afraid, just a constant maintenance problem and just becoming just damp and muddy and potentially, for the kids, a source of just constant tracking in and out and damaging the school and just not having the same quality of the play experience for the kid. That portion of the site is definitely the highest and driest and was hoped to be maintained that way.
You're talking, if I'm looking at this properly, the marks here is 22 feet. And if I'm looking at this incorrectly, it's 22 feet as opposed to 25 feet. That's 3 feet.
Yes. That makes a big difference when we're in this site.
But if you take it back up a little further, then you're back up to that 25 feet at the next one.
But again, if we pave this area where it's the highest, that will run off to the lower area, and that's going to compound the problem.
But I think the creek runs down.
The creek runs, yes, down on these plans, yes.
You know, it runs
North to south.
right. It's running north, and
No, it's running south.
Yeah, from the northern edge to the southern edge.
okay.
Correct. Why don't I let Tony have a chance to present the other plan, which is the master plan that would address the restoration of the riparian boundary.
You may want to zoom in on that. I'm looking at the site plan here that identifies the areas where a proper riparian buffer would be established. What the law identifies here is the setback of the riparian buffer, but not necessarily what constitutes a riparian buffer and how those elements, when included in a plan for a riparian buffer, what effects they have on the environment and the ecology of that stream. First off, the stream itself is considered an aquatic zone, and where plant and wildlife are dependent upon the riparian buffer for the health of that stream, the water quality, and the animals and plant type. The first zone, left and right of the aquatic zone, is zone 1, and typically trees or shrubs are planted to stabilize the stream bank, shade the stream, and supply inputs of organic matter into the system. The second zone is the green zone, again left and right of zone 1, and that's zone 2, typically planted with trees. The other information describe it as a managed forest, but it's typically planted with trees. It's important for slowing runoff and also nutrient absorption. And then the third zone is planted as a grassland or meadow. It's important for slowing runoff and trapping sediment. We have conditions here where we basically have a grassland right to the stream. And you'll see that in photos of the existing condition.
Is there some work that's been done that's causing this erosion? What do we have here?
This is caused by the runoff from the Sproul Road side across essentially just flat lawn, and the conditions of the current bridge, which is...
cleared the whole front of this property.
We cleared 5 trees that were along...
I drive by there almost every day. I mean, I can see the house now. Before I couldn't see the house.
We were required to create sightlines for the driveway. We cleared 5 trees along the road, and we planted 5 trees that will provide shade now that are near the stream edge. So as those trees mature anyway.
May I ask who did the plans? Am I missing it here somewhere?
Shelter Design Group is my company,
Okay.
and Anthony Aceto is our landscape designer.
Okay. What's your background in riparian?
I have a degree in horticulture from Penn State University.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I have a degree in horticulture from Penn State University. I've practiced, I've been a landscape contractor, landscape designer on the main line for 10 years.
Do you specialize in riparian restoration?
No.
No? Have you done it before?
Just on a contract side.
In other words, you were putting in somebody else's plans.
Put in gabions to
Okay.
stabilize the creek
And
along the driveway.
Who drew these?
Tony
I
did
did
these
the
particular
drawings.
sketches. And we've done research, and the information that we're presenting here is from state sources and so on.
Also, the grading has been done by Yerkes. Didn't
Yes.
Yerkes supplied the new contour, the grading. I'm inputting expertise in terms of the plant types specified here.
Okay.
Native plants and also plants that would improve the wildlife along the stream. You'll see in the plant list a number of the plants come from the Pennsylvania Wildlife Riparian Buffers for Wildlife, number 16.
Is that part of our package?
No, that's part of the research that was done to create the plan. And
There are
essentially,
plans shown on the second sheet.
This comes from Penn State University.
All this work that we see out, sketched out, that you're talking about, could be done whether the driveway is in the new location or not, correct?
it could, yes. This has been historically maintained as lawn on both
Right.
sides.
The problem I'm having, and I'm certainly not an expert on riparian buffer, but is that the code is designed to protect stream beds and water rights and so on. And our job is to grant relief if there's a hardship. I don't see a hardship, I haven't seen a hardship yet, that makes me feel that we should grant this, that I would approve it. There's a huge, I don't know what, there's a huge percentage of the driveway is in the buffer. And I don't know whether maybe you don't know the answer to this, but one question I would have, how much square footage is in the buffer now compared to the original plan that was a year ago?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number,
Okay.
but it's something like 1,000 square feet that has been added. And we've added also, much more than that in our approach to the riparian buffer. So
Right.
we're looking at the entire site as a riparian zone. And I would
But-
suggest that the paving behaves very similarly to the lawn that is there now in terms of how it responds to the surface hydrology. These other areas that are closer to the stream bed that will be planted with shrubs and so on, that are there to maintain that bank and control the erosion and to provide filtration, work in conjunction with these grassy areas, and the paving would essentially behave very similarly to, it wouldn't allow any permeation, but we're in a floodplain where that doesn't happen anyway, especially during a stormwater event. So the location of the paving in this third zone, where we have essentially grasses and other flat topography, is consistent with the state guidelines and with this proposal that would restore this stream bed. The code is interested in protecting the stream, and so is this plan, and that's really what we're trying to put forth. The hardships that you asked for, the cost of the other location for the bridge.
I understand the
enormous.
cost of the other bridge. That I don't have any doubt
The
about.
impact
But
to the
putting
function of the school is critical in terms of how the kids come and go and how they handle their daily activities.
But 1,000 square feet of paving in the back corner of the property
Mm-hmm.
would have far less impact on the stream than 1,000 square
I
feet.
think it
of-
would have an increased impact, because right now that back area has a higher grade and is the only part of the site that does percolate. So stormwater that runs off from the Blue Route and down that bank, and stormwater that lands on that portion of the site, does have a chance to enter the ground at that point. If we pave that area, that will become runoff, and that will be handled by the lower portion of the site, which is incapable of handling that kind of additional load. So it will directing water into the stream much more rapidly than being close to the stream here, giving that other location a chance to collect whatever stormwater it can collect.
Don't you have a stormwater management system in this also?
Yes, we do. I have the
I
grading
remember.
permit plan, if you're interested in seeing that shows the stormwater management.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know why you couldn't deter some of that into that stormwater management system from up there.
Well, we could, but there's a limitation to that. Because of the floodplain, that stormwater system is designed to hold a certain amount of rainfall and then release it at a predetermined rate. That is overwhelmed by a major storm event, but it's designed to handle a 2-year storm event based on the increase in impervious coverage that we provided in developing the plan.
And I think you'd have less impervious coverage going straight in also.
Well, we don't have that option because we have to leave the bridge in its current location. If we have to bring the parking fully behind the building, the impervious coverage is about the same. And in fact, we're essentially at our limit in either case.
I don't know how that could be, because you're running that driveway all the way across almost the whole north-south trajectory of the property, the width of the property, as opposed to coming straight in and parking in the back.
It's only an additional 20 feet or so in length of that driveway, because we'd have to come far enough to clear the back of the building to do that. We did lay it out that way. I don't have that plan with me, but it was a wash in terms of impervious coverage. But again, the location of that coverage and the impact of that impervious surface there is more likely to cause runoff into the stream if we change and move the parking into that higher portion of the site that's now being used as a play area.
Is the school currently in operation? No?
We don't have students on the site
Okay.
yet.
Have you done your playground in the back yet?
Yeah, it's there.
Do you have
There's
any
a-
photos of it?
I don't have any photos.
Or is it
of
is it a grass playground or wood chips?
I'm having a hard time why this wasn't recognized before now. I mean, you came in so organized last time, and you obviously only looked organized.
Well, we didn't anticipate the enormous delays and costs involved in relocating the bridge.
But why?
Well,
if
as
you
an architect,
were
I don't
working for
generally
me,
do
I would be very upset. I mean, you're bordering on not getting this place open, and somebody made that mistake.
We had not hired an engineer at that point. We didn't.
I mean, how could you not? I'm like, it's not my job to lecture you.
On the site plan, you have the parking lot is listed as parking option A. I don't see, is there an option B?
I think B reflects the previous one that we've discussed here. It's not presented here. This is just a leftover from that study.
I have a question, and perhaps it's best directed to your horticulturalist. Can you describe for me? I mean, I get the idea of stabilizing the stream bank and getting a better condition there, but I guess it was at least initially portrayed as a sort of the planting was an offset to the paving parts of the riparian buffer. Can you explain how that works?
Well, essentially, right now, just having turf there, you don't have a riparian buffer. You have lawns on either side of a stream. Mm-hmm. You have 1/3 of what is required for a riparian buffer. So by now establishing the shrubbery, establishing the trees, you're now putting into the plan the other essential elements of the plan. The root zones of the trees and the shrubs are much more developed systems that will hold much more soil, much more deeply than turf grasses will. The trees also create a lot of surface area, and so do the shrubs, simply by being in leaf. So they'll break raindrops, they'll slow raindrops and the impact that raindrops have hitting the surface. Turf, and we do have large expanses of turf, especially between Sproul Road and the creek, which do a nice job of slowing rainwater on the surface, but they don't do enough to stop rainwater and to help assimilate that rainwater into the ground. I mean, when it rains hard, the turf lays down and the water runs over it. So by now establishing a true riparian buffer, you're actually not just saying, well, we have a riparian buffer that's only defined by a code.
Right.
You actually have a riparian buffer.
Well, here's a question for you. Why is the riparian buffer on the Sproul Road side and
It's
not?
on both.
It's only shown on
It's
the
shown.
plan
The
on.
record plan that we submitted with the application, you're looking at A3. That shows an area that was identified as an additional area that could be planted as a riparian buffer in exchange for the encroachment we were creating. So the current plan that shows how that would be executed shows those zones 1 and 2 being planted on both sides of the stream fully throughout the site.
So you're saying basically the L1 plan?
L1 is the planting plan that's being proposed.
And the L1 and L2 plans would be conditions to any approval?
Yeah, I mean, that's the intent, that we would execute this, but this would be construed as a master plan. We have still a bridge to create and so forth, so the timing of this plan would depend on the completion of those aspects of the project.
But it'd be part of your, you would put in plantings substantially in accordance with this, although the detail, candidly, as I see it, is a little, it's not as specific as we might see in a formal land development plan.
Right.
We do have a specific planting plan that shows the number and sizes and locations and so forth of the various
Do they
types.
actually
So
have the?
Yeah, it's on L1.
Here's a
Right.
planting
Sorry.
it's very
schedule.
specific in terms
No,
of.
I'm sorry, I take that back.
The second page of
Shows pictures of the
L2
plant.
does identify in photograph that plant material,
I see.
and also planting notes, and in terms of tree protection, bed preparation, planting specification, and also seeding specification, as well as planting details.
In answer to your question is yes, we would be willing to place
Make
this
that
as a
a
condition
condition.
of the relief. One other thing that's changed in this plan from the previous is that the parking area has actually been reduced in size because of the presence of 3 large mature ash trees that were deemed worth saving, and so those were not cut down, although the ones in the front of the property were cleared. Those have been retained, and that parking area has been reduced a bit to preserve those.
Plan also promotes diversity. We're losing diversity in the landscape, and a lot of these native plants will also increase the diversity. If you look at what's growing along that stream now, it's basically privet, maple, sycamore, and tulip, and that's really it.
And in contrast to the natural areas that are on either side of the property where you can see, the presence of actual riparian plants and so forth, there's a stark contrast in this flat lawn that's just eroding away at this point, and we're seeking to bring it back to that more natural state of being. In particular, the erosion, that zone that's square now and sheared off, would be naturalized with a grade of less than 1 and 2, and a matrix applied there would retain that soil or stones or whatever would need to create that bank, and then the plantings would obviously over time put the root structure in that would retain that.
Excuse me 1 second. Excuse me, Bob, can you tell us a little bit about from your perspective, what the riparian buffer protection is supposed to do? I mean, what is the goal of having that?
It was touched upon a bit. The riparian zone, the riparian buffer is in place to protect the integrity of the area surrounding the stream itself, the stream bed, the banks. The immediate area adjacent to a water course is the riparian zone. So in essence, what we're looking for here is something that recognizes the existing zone of riparian on this lot and what can be done in addition to what's there to further improve the integrity of that riparian zone and to stabilize that riparian zone and to enhance the riparian area adjacent to the stream, as was touched upon by the witness. So that's the key issue here. The riparian buffer dimension is relatively an arbitrary distance, but in essence, it's protection of the area and the zone adjacent to the water course.
So one second. So when the township sees these kinds of things, and there's a suggestion to do any kind of work in the riparian buffer area, the township wants to see this sort of planting or efforts taken to stabilize the stream banks by planting shrubs, trees, etc.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That position was echoed by Dan Malloy, township engineer, who doesn't come to testify to these things, but this is obviously
That's why I asked
worked
Mr.
closely
Loper.
with him in terms of developing this site, and he's obviously in support of this kind of thinking that would not just adhere to the rather arbitrary distance, but actually provide the kind of buffer that's important to the stream quality.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We probably ought to, if we haven't sworn Bob in already, since he did offer testimony, we probably ought to ask him to, be sworn in and affirm the testimony he's given and so forth, just to make our record square.
Let's do that.
You testify that the testimony you previously given was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Bob, was this reviewed by township staff, and they felt that the riparian buffer as shown was proper?
No, Kathy, I wouldn't go that far yet. I think the issue, the applicants of engineers and architects have been in discussion with Dan Malloy regarding the overall grading permit, the stormwater management plan, and then the subsequent change of the location of the bridge and the detail showing the driveway location being in the riparian zone presented a basic conflict with the detail of what's prescribed in the zoning district for that riparian area. And that alone would instigate the zoning hearing board's involvement, because we're the applicant's proposing to develop an area that is under riparian setback requirement. The details of the plan submitted, I can't speak as to how far or closely they were looked at by Dan Malloy's office yet or not, but subsequent to the decision of the zoning hearing board, they will be looked at very closely, depending on whether or not plan of L1 or 2, et cetera, is part of the conditional agreement or approval of the proposal.
To the extent I would insist that the plans be acceptable and approved by Dan Malloy or township staff.
With regard to riparian
Absolutely.
plantings, because I don't feel this board's qualified to
Absolutely not. I completely
take a
agree.
position on whether the plantings are accurate or not.
In the absence of an engineer here to advise us, I mean, frankly, we have no reason to doubt you, but
We also have no
we
reason
also
to
have no
believe you.
independent. We have counsel to answer legal questions, but we don't have our own engineer to answer engineering questions. So.
And if you saw my garden, I am not in a position to offer advice on
Black
plantings.
thumbs, 2 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were thinking about calling a lifeline, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the plan. I don't know if you have any other questions about it or anything else that we can offer.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? By the way, before we close on this, there was a letter received, and I apologize for not having it handy and not having read it before we started.
That letter hasn't signed.
It was.
We have a
That's
signed
not the one.
counterpart.
Do we have a signed one?
We have something else.
We have a signed counterpart of the letter, and a copy was given to the applicant at the just before the hearing started. It's a letter from James Schneller asking for party status opposing the relief and even suggesting at the end that if we could possibly scale back or reverse the relief granted in Appeal 2776, that would be, you would like to see that as well.
Okay.
And
Do we accept his idea of standing?
Well,
or do we question his?
I'm not sure if we can make it part of the record. That doesn't mean that we agree that he has standing, and I presume you would object.
Yeah,
to
we'd
his.
like to object to his being included as having, we don't believe he does have standing. I don't know where his residence is, but he's admitting that he's not a neighbor of the property in the letter that's in question, so.
Well, his address is listed at the, it's
You're
at
correct.
500 East Lancaster Avenue, which I assume is some distance from the property.
Yes, it certainly is.
Just as a general thing, we don't accept emails. I think a fax signature is enough to get party status, but it doesn't get you very much more than that. I think you fairly raised the objection on the record to Mr. Schneller's standing to be there, and I think that objection should be duly noted in the record. This is not the best way to, but at least this one was signed, unlike the other one,
Right.
which was an unsigned email, which we cannot accept an unsigned email.
His objection is also absent the information here, so I'd like the chance to present the information to him. And,
No, I mean,
Well,
he
he's
chose
not
to be
here, so
He chose not to be here.
That's his decision. There is actually, in addition, another letter of objection dated May 13, 2009, from Ann Minakazi and Craig Wieland of 129 Radnor Avenue, Villanova. The letter reads, "To members of the Zoning Hearing Board, pursuant to the Zoning Hearing Board agenda item for the May 21st, 2009, 7:30 p.m. meeting listed as appeal number 2815, Ward 4, regarding the property located at 459 Sproul Road, Villanova, upon which now stands the mainline Montessori School. We are in receipt of written notice of the above meeting date and time, as our residence is adjacent to said property. We disagree that the applicant should be granted their request of relief from strict enforcement of riparian buffer as determined by the township engineer for a driveway or any other use. The property, which is a wetlands, was purchased with full knowledge of the type of property it indeed is. The riparian buffer ordinance is crucial to protecting Radnor waterways and should not be eased in this wetland property. The riparian buffer ordinance should be enforced. Thank you for upholding Radnor Township ordinances and for avoiding piecemeal responses so the waterways may remain protected." Have you seen this?
no, I have not.
You want to take a look?
We need to enter these into the record.
Yeah.
Mr. Schneller's letter I would put in as P1, and this letter would be P2.
P2.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And maybe this is for you, but is the intent of this section of the code that if a property, if work does intrude into the floodplain, into the riparian buffer, that it, by way of plantings or whatever else, be made whole, be made the equivalent of what it was without, what it would be without that construction, or?
I'm not sure you could do that. I mean, I think the question is whether whether a planting could be done to adequately alleviate the change. I mean, you're changing it, and once you change it, you have an apple versus an orange. The question is whether you can get the orange to be functionally equivalent or at least acceptable to the original
And I think the
situation.
testimony here was we're going from lawn to, from nothing to something,
Yeah,
basically.
it seems clear that the intent of the code is to protect the quality of the water, and that's the intent of this plan as well. Even though there is pavement, we've got a plan that does exactly that, so.
I think it's also to protect the
I think
whole.
the siting of the paving is very sensitive to how the water moves on the site as well. I mean,
Could you narrow down the driveway a little bit and shave off some of that square footage that intrudes?
The area that's across that section is at a minimum width for a single lane of traffic. So, no, we have a couple areas for turning around and making turns, but that narrowest point is only the 12-foot minimum width that we would need for a single lane of traffic.
Any other members? Oh, Mr. Loper.
Jim, do you want to take testimony from anyone in the audience?
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Reminder.
Anyone else on the board have any questions or comments? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments they'd like to make? None? Okay. Do you want to move to have your exhibits made part of the record?
Yes.
Thank you. We'd like to take a 10-minute break.
Leave this.
Just leave it.
No, no, it's fine.
We've had some discussions about this, and it's our view that we think that it's important for us to hear from the township engineer on this, so that we can get some guidance from folks on our end. There's, has been remarked by members of the board, there's concern about the extent of intrusion into the riparian buffer. We think it makes sense for this application to be continued to next month so that we can hear from Mr. Malloy. And we think it's frankly in your best interest to grant a continuance at this point. Any other members of the board have any comments?
I would suggest that the appellant might want to bring an expert as to why they think, traversing the riparian buffer is okay with the amount of work that you're going to do. And that's just my opinion.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I need more information on the plan selection and the reason why you're doing and rebuilding the riparian buffer this way.
Unfortunately for you guys, this is one of the first, it's the
I
first
think it is the first.
riparian buffer case I've had, and I've been on the board at least 5 years, and you guys have been on longer
I
than I.
don't, well, it's a fairly new part of the ordinance. Bob, when was that enacted? The riparian part?
So unfortunately, you are kind of our guinea pigs on this one.
2003.
Yeah. So, I think I've been on since '04 and never. So I think we need some township guidance on this, and we're going to need a little bit more guidance from you guys as well.
I think a couple of questions that, again, do you really need all this impervious intrusion? Because the code does say we're supposed to limit that. I'd be interested in, I don't know if the board would agree with this, on some comfort that putting this much impervious will not cause a downstream problem, from converting, natural surfaces to impervious. And then again, more information on the planning and a chance for the township engineer to, address this, before us so we can understand what's going on.
Right.
One other question. What were you going to do on the other one? Were you going to do anything in the riparian buffer?
Well, the code requires that we stay 35 feet away from the edge. So it's in our interest to stabilize the stream bank, and certainly the area that's suffering from the greatest amount of erosion needs to be regraded and so forth. But this kind of a planting plan, was an effort to provide the riparian restoration that's lacking there.
Yep, but what were you going to do the last time, when you came here the first time, when you're going to reposition the road, reposition the driveway? Were you going to do anything in the buffer area?
It hadn't been considered at this level at that point, and we were not fully aware of what the issues were with respect to the stream at that point. So we didn't have a good plan in effect then.
Charlie, we did approve in the last plan, if you look at their new plan, rather than have this long road going up to the old bridge, they were going to get rid of that and just basically run a new driveway straight across.
Yes, I saw that, John.
Would be,
I'm just wondering that...
The net would be in the older one, in terms of impervious surfaces anyway, would be a lot less, because you're just doing a straight line rather than this long curvy thing.
Yeah, and I live on a creek, so I know the issues that come up with living on creeks. When they overflow, when I moved in, the bank was 20 feet. It's now, in 30 years, and it's been rebuilt by the township 5 times in the 30-some years I've lived there, and it's back to where it was. It's like now 2 foot from the sewer line, and it used to be 30 feet. So it just keeps happening. It's going to just keep coming.
And it's been happening on this site.
Yeah, it's like I said, it looks like it's been cleared, so it's going to be. When the waters come, it's very scary. I saw, the creek pick up, the real railroad ties, 10-foot railroad ties, which not the small, not the 4x4s, but the 8x8s, and float them, 200 feet down properties. It's nasty stuff, and it happens there. It happens there. So I just think by putting this road traversing in that buffer area, I think you're looking for trouble. I don't necessarily believe that going straight across and up the side may not, in the long run, save you aggravation. But I don't know. I don't have that expertise. I've only watched the creek. I don't know what makes it do what it does. And every year it gets worse. Every year as they build upstream, it gets worse downstream.
Well, this plan has no more impervious coverage than the previous plan and would improve the stream, so that's our
But
goal.
the impervious area is in the riparian buffer.
Right,
And
it's-
that's all we're concerned about.
It's an intrusion issue, not an impervious issue. So, would you
So
agree to
Question,
continue to next time?
yes.
Okay.
And
great.
give us the extension of time for making our decision, so that we start it after the, hearing in June.
Yes. Would Mr. Malloy be asked to be present?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. We're adjourned.